Recently, I've been playing old school Street Fighter, and that's been pretty fun. And when it was finished, I craved a little bit more. So I decided to go hunting around for something similar that could scratch that itch. And that's what led me to this game. With all my early years playing Street Fighter, I'd seen this game, but never gave it a second thought. And I think that's solely because of the name. Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix. When I came across this game years ago, I made the assumption that this was a puzzle game, in the same vein as, say, Puzzle Fighter or something like that. The thing that baffles me is that this game in Japan was released as Pocket Fighters, and I think that name is substantially better. Nonetheless, when I looked into this game and realised this plays like a traditional fighter, my hype went through the roof. But is this game a forgotten gem? Wink wink, or just another failed spin-off? I'm Budget Disney Princess, and this is my retrospective of Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix. The visuals in this game? Wow, this game looks beautiful, especially for a game released almost 30 years ago at this time. A large part of it aging so well is the chibi and cartoonish art style, which games like this it's easy to see why they age so well. Animated graphics just were perfected at this time. But the graphics can't be the sole reason a game looks good. What makes visuals is personality. Even a game that looks ugly on the surface can still have an underlying charm that helps it stand out. Super Gem Fighter Minimix doesn't just do this well, it completely nails it. The art direction in this game really understood the assignment. The character models loop and scratch like cartoons, and one thing you'll notice is that doing certain moves with a character, they can dress like another character from a Capcom franchise. Some of my personal favourites are Chun-Li turning into Jill Valentine's outfit when she shoots, and Ken turning into a cowboy for some reason. And the references in the character models are minor compared to the stages. The stages here are a really huge high point. From fighting in a bar in a Street Fighter location to fighting in a mansion based on Darkstalkers, the stages here are absolutely incredible. But what excels the design of these stages is the background characters, which are all references in themselves. Or I don't know if you could even call them references, seeing as the games take place in the same continuity, but nonetheless seeing these background characters is such a treat. Like, you'll be slapping someone brutally, and then you're like, whoa, it's Cammy sitting at the bar. I know her from the Street Fighter.
I clapped when I saw it!
You're gonna see characters from Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, or even Red Earth that didn't make the roster, watching the fight all with their own little chibi designs. There was no reason whatsoever to go this hard, but I'm so glad that they did. The roster in this game is pretty small, but as small as it is, it does have a good variety of Capcom series. Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Sakura, Zangief, Ibuki from the Street Fighter series are here. Morgan, Felicia, Hisenkyo from Darkstalkers are here, and Tessa from Red Earth for the 5 of you out there who remember what Red Earth is. There is 2 unlockable characters, Akuma of course, who has to meet his quota, and Dan, who sort of wandered in. I do think the base roster is pretty good, especially with having Sakura and Ibuki, 2 characters who I wouldn't have expected to be picked, but are some of my personal favourites, so I'm not complaining about that. The characters are chibi and cute, but they are exactly the characters you expect, usually with a few small things I'd like to get into later. It's hard to explain, but the characters play exactly like a chibi cute version of that character would. When you play as Sakura, even though this is the only way that's portrayed, you'll immediately think, yep, this is Sakura. The characters also have great teams, which is not surprising seeing as they are lifted teams from other games. Ibuki uses a Street Fighter 3 team, for example. It means, yeah, this game has a banging soundtrack, but at the same time it also deprives this game of an original soundtrack. They implemented these characters absolutely perfectly, which with the small roster seems extremely essential. Super Gem Fighter Minimix doesn't have a story really, or an overarching plot. There is something here as the characters do have a motivation for fighting, but they're usually pretty comedic. Ryu is looking for Tessa from Red Earth in order to help him find a challenge, which she gladly obliged. Tessa is looking for Hisenkyo to find the magic wand that she has, which accidentally turns her into a penguin. It happens, of course. Hisenkyo is looking for Zangief after she sees his offering for a part-time job. Zangief is looking for Felicia in order to bring her to Russia for her performance. Felicia is looking for Ken because she knows he has connections and she wants to get into the movie industry. Chun-Li is also looking for Felicia, thinking she's an escaped zoo animal. You want to be a cat girl? Then get in the cage and commit, basically. Morgan is looking for Chun-Li after hearing how hot she is, to beat her up because she can't handle people gooning about her and thinking she's more attractive, but even after that beating she still gets cooked by Lilith. Akuma's home is being renovated, all his years of looking for an opponent, and he found one he couldn't defeat, capitalism. There is 2 endings in particular that baffle me. Dan's ending shows him looking for Sakura, who joins his class and after 3 days leaves saying she's learned enough and how Dan is an awful fighter. Now I don't know if Sakura's character was fully established yet, But Sakura is an absolute sweetheart. I could never see her being this mean-hearted. In fact, the canon pretty much goes the complete opposite as Sakura joins Dan's dojo along with Blanca and goes on adventures with them. I could pass this off as Sakura's character just not being that well known, but Ken's story is a complete mistreatment of the character. Ken decides he's bored of married life and wants to meet a pretty girl for tea. I don't know if that's alluding to something else, but that's his main motivation for entering this whole thing. He eventually finds Morgan and takes her on a shopping spree, with Eliza catching him and beating the crap out of him. This completely goes against both of their characters. If you know Ken, it's been established since the second game that Eliza is the love of Ken's life and Ken is a devoted family man. Don't do that to my man. Ken wouldn't be doing this. Even Eliza, who's portrayed as this hot-headed, jealous archetype of a wife, completely goes against her character. She's completely laid back, and even though she fears Ken fighting, she supports and understands him. Even when she was close to having a baby, she was like, you know Ryu rarely comes by, you gotta fight him. You'll be back in time, I want you to get out there and fight your best friend in a parking lot, cause I know that will make you more happy. So I said, leave Ken alone, he's a family man, and his bark is much worse than his bite. This man's whole life pretty much revolves around fighting Ryu when he's in town, working sometimes, doing business, and taking care of his wife and child. This isn't a deal breaker for the game, of course, although it feels a bit contradictory to the established characters in canon. The gameplay is what makes this game stand out. First thing that's most noticeable is difficulty. This game is substantially easier than Street Fighter. You won't be crying at the end when M. Bison flies in to read your inputs and Psycho crushes your health bar to a paste. No, not at all. The good thing is that the characters also retain their special moves from their respective series, and they've been implemented pretty well here. In fact, they're a core part of the gameplay. The movesets implemented aren't one-to-one copies, but it does a tremendous job in implementing these moves. Ryu and Ken retain their Shoto status, Zangief is a grappler, Chun-Li's technical, and one thing I absolutely love is that the inputs remain the same from the character's native game, which means you can jump straight in to do a Hadouken or a Shoryuken almost immediately. One of the biggest differences is that the circle/B button can deliver a heavy attack that if done right can extend or set up a combo, and with the fluidity that this game offers, despite its toned down moveset, it feels simple to mix up your own combos as moves naturally flow into each other. This game also does a few things differently. With the fluid attack options and to differentiate itself from Street Fighter, instead of a dash you have a run button, which I love. I've always been a fan of the run button over a dash. Also, a mechanic taken straight from the Marvel vs. Capcom series, a super jump. Pressing down and up quickly will cause your opponent to burst into the air. Admittedly, it's nowhere near as useful as it was in the Marvel vs. Capcom games, as while Marvel vs. Capcom does a lot of fighting in the air, Super Jump Fighter is much more grounded. Still, I won't complain about having this mechanic in the game. As you slap your opponent, you'll notice these gems flying out with various colours, and collecting a certain coloured gem will fill a little meter that corresponds to one of your special moves. And you'll earn a level, which will make when you pull off a special move much more powerful. The final level on the special move, reaching 3, can cause some serious damage to your opponent's health bar. And with a well-placed combo, you can get a lot of gems to come out, meaning they're not too difficult to collect at all. So if you play your cards right, you can make your character a beast, shooting Hadoukens, while your opponent is trying to scrape you with a sharp claw.
Is that all you can do? Ow! That kind of hurt. God, is that bleeding? No, I guess it's alright. Ouch, though!
There is supers in this game called Mighty Combos, but unfortunately they're not essential to the gameplay. The gameplay is so simple that by the time you've built up a super, you probably aren't going to really need it. It can still make for a good finisher though. If you do collect enough gems though, you can perform a powerful and brutal move in the air that at the cost of your own gems can deliver some devastating damage. There is an auto combo here, and this is where the character reference I mentioned earlier came into play. I know there's probably an audible groan hearing about an auto combo, but just like the later King of Fighters, no one is forcing you to use it, so if you don't want to, you don't have to. I do not think this gameplay fits well in a competitive setting, but as for a fun game to pick up and play, I think it absolutely nails it. Super Gem Fighter Minimix is an incredible game that I would recommend to anybody who is a fan of the classic Street Fighter series. If you love a certain aspect, that is. If you're someone who plays Third Strike every day and are looking for a challenge, then you're not going to find a challenge here. However, if you love the lore and characters of Street Fighter, then this game could be right down your alley. And also, if you have a little mini-you, one of them kid things, who you want to introduce into fighting games, then this is the perfect type of introduction. Like, they won't get the references, but cute cartoon characters are something I think kids do like. I mean, I would be very confused if they did get the references. Like, if a 4-year-old who never picked up a controller before was like, whoa, it's Felicia from Darkstalkers. I'd be just looking at them like, wait, how did you know that? The chibi characters have aged so beautifully, and I think its art style is completely timeless. In another 20 years, I can see this game still being admired for its visuals. I think it's strange because this game released when Tekken and everything were getting big, so the 2D art style was being seen as old back then. But now games like Tekken 1 aren't winning any beauty awards, while these type of 2D games have aged like a fine wine. I think this game will be much more respected now than it was in its initial release. This isn't a long game, and if you want to, you could probably see everything this game has to offer in a day, but this game appears frequently in collections and can be bought for $2.99 on the Capcom Arcade Stadium, which is how I purchased it in the first place. It's a great addition to any Capcom collection. I've been Budget Disney Princess, and this has been my Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix Retrospective. Stay awesome. Peace.